Conversations with Azu Ishekwene.
The 2023 presidential elections in Nigeria presented an interesting scenario. The All Progressives Congress won 12 states. The People's Democratic Party won 12 states. And the Labour Party won 12 states. It seemed like some sort of balance, you may argue. But today, the All Progressive Congress is making an inroads in manners that are presenting a challenge to opposition parties in Nigeria. The All Progressive Congress currently controls 22 states across the federation. I'm talking about governorship seats now, and an absolute majority in the National Assembly as well as in the House of Representatives. Now, some Nigerians are afraid that the country is tending towards a one-party state, and this forms the basis of today's very interesting political discussion on our weekly diary on life and politics. And it is aptly titled, Atiku, not Tinubu, is the wrecking ball. Stay with us as we discuss this column with our regular guest, Azu Ishekwene, the award-winning columnist, who is here with me on set to talk about today's episode of Conversation with Azu. Azu, you're welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me once again, Julia. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. We dive straight in. You have argued that Atiku is the problem of the PDP. Is Atiku the victim of his own ambition, or how is he the problem of the PDP?
Okay, let me just dial back a bit. Thanks for the question. Great question. But let me just dial back a bit to the intro about the PDP and APC and Labour Party winning 12 states each. I think that if one is not careful, some people might interpret that to mean that each of those states, that the parties had 12
governorship
governors.
seats.
Yes,
that's why I said the presidential election results.
Yes, so that's right. But there are people who may hear you differently.
Yes.
So it's important that we
clarify.
underline the fact that you said that that was in the presidential election in terms of the total number of votes cast for each of them. But now to your question about how Atiku really is the problem. I think it's basically his ambition. And it's interesting that it's an ambition that goes all the way back to 1998, as I said in my column, when a Marabout, and this was not just making things up. You can go and find. When a Marabout actually said, after he won the governorship, or Adamawa State at the time, and then former President Obasanjo then reached out to him, and then the PDP made him the vice presidential candidate, and he had to step down. From that point, I think there had been this forecast by Marabout that it was just a heartbeat away from the presidency, and that has been at the heart of his very, very fierce ambition to get to the number one spot. And just barely after the first term, he fell out with Obasanjo, and that was how it ended. But you then must ask yourself, because he was also he received the legacy of the People's Front. The People's Front was one of the most formidable political groups by Yar'Adua. Maybe we'll get to that. What happened to the People's Front? It's not just enough for you to be ambitious for a position. It's not a crime. But then there has to come a time for somebody of Atiku's pedigree when you then ask yourself whether this ambition is just going to serve your personal interest or whether it's going to serve the larger interest of the group to which you belong.
There are many Nigerians today, pointing accusing fingers at the incumbent president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The APC right now controls 22 states. Governors, has 22 governors across the country. And there are chances this number may rise to about 26 before this year ends. Is Nigeria in danger of becoming a one-party state?
I would say that I do not think so. Yes, that concern has been expressed. But it is not the duty of President Tinubu, or indeed any president in his shoes, to help the opposition to win elections. That's not. You're asking for self-sabotage, and I don't know where that's done. If the opposition wants to win the election, and it has a fighting chance of doing so in spite of the odds, it should put itself in order, in order and organize in a viable, serious, robust way to engage voters to win. That's what I believe. And we saw this with Peter Obi, the Labour Party. Peter Obi, as I also said in my column, declared for the Labour Party 9 months to the election, and he got, in spite of that, he got 6.1 million votes during the election, as against the PDP, more established brand, which had 6.9 million votes, and against the president who, that was just marginally, ahead in terms of total votes cast. So it is not really it's not the job of the president, and people can look for something else to beat him, over the head, but certainly not the fact that PDP governors are defecting. They should look inwards, because, as they say in my neck of the woods, the worm that is eating the wood is right inside the wood.
In this politics of opportunism, what can be done to make Nigeria's politics more ideologically driven?
Ideology itself, if you look across the world, ideology itself is losing the sort of hold and grip that it has in the fascination of, many people across the world. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just a set of ideas and thoughts around which you organize action. So it's good because it provides focus, it provides direction. It also gives you an idea of what sets one political party apart from the other, and makes the choice sort of clearer. But even at that, even in more established countries, more established democracies, where parties are more ideologically driven, parties are also moving a bit, either going a bit far right or left, or drifting a bit to the center to win during elections. You look at what is happening in the UK, for example, where you can hardly now distinguish between the Labour Party and Reform UK and the Conservatives. In the desperate, ideologically they have different, set of ideas driving them. But also in a bid to win the elections, the parties are finding that they are drifting a lot more towards the middle. So ideology is good, but I'm not a hostage of ideology. Actually, I'm not. If you have a set of programs around which you can organize your thoughts and galvanize voters and mobilize people and mobilize action, for me that works. I'm not an ideologue, if I might put it that way.
Now, quoting directly from your column, Sule Lamido, one of the founders of the People's Democratic Party, is calling on President Bola Tinubu to save the People's Democratic, the opposition party.
Yes.
How?
I think you should ask Sule Lamido why he's doing that. Because why is he doing that? He's in a much better position to answer the question, because I guess that is the problem with our politicians. You are conferring on the president the powers that the ordinary. It is not in it. And then you are asking, why are you holding him to account for a power that he doesn't have? What should he do? He should tell those people who are coming, don't come to APC, stay in your PDP. Or how is it supposed to? I don't understand. How exactly is it supposed to? Who is going to pay him for that self-sabotage?
In other words, Sule Lamido should be talking to Atiku.
If Sule Lamido wants to go and join the APC, let him go. Let him go and join the APC. But on a more serious note, I think politicians who are serious, every country could do with some sort of viable alternative options. All right, and it's not a de jure, one party sort of system that we have, like the sort of thing you have in China, for example. Okay. So if it's driven, because of to use your phrase, the lack of ideology, parties are viewed more as platforms for grabbing power, as some people have said. Well, that's also part of our duties as voters, as citizens, to hold them accountable and to be, to have them organize themselves around the sort of values and ideas that will serve our interests. You see, the funny thing about Nigerians, we love to complain a lot. But most of these parties, whether they are election grabbing platforms or whatever you choose, are set up and funded by politicians who God knows where they made their money from. The so-called voters and people who complain about lack of ideology separating the parties, what is their skin in the game? How much of their own money and effort goes towards the building of those platforms that they are talking about? I don't know. If we really want parties that will be driven around the set of ideas and values that we cherish as ordinary citizens, then we must organize ourselves. And of course, there are a few of such platforms coming. I mean, Shores is clear about what he's doing and is driving in that direction. Great idea. All right. We need to see more of such efforts rather than people just coming out and just crying wolf where, in my view, none exists.
Yeah, I find this political commentary very, very interesting. And I imagine many readers asking rhetorically or perhaps even calling you and asking, waiting Atiku do you? Or waiting Tinubu give this man. So,
interestingly,
has your phone been ringing?
Oh, well, yes. Well, yes. Yes, I've been getting messages and calls from people who say, look, but there's really nothing personal. And I'm happy to engage and have conversations around this subject because it's one, whether you're a politician or you are not, so to speak, politics is something that one way or the other affects all of us, all right? It sort of molds and shapes policies ultimately, and we're affected one way or the other. My point really at the end of the day is not to say that, that we do not value alternative views or alternative platforms are not welcome. No, but it's to say that rather than complain, and to be fair to Atiku, he did not say that the defections were a bad thing. Of course, he couldn't say that because he himself has been a serial defector, all right? So he wouldn't say that. He didn't say that. But what he said was that the policies so far, the last 2 years of the Tinubu administration, if we were to vote on record, will not return him to office. But fair enough. But if the PDP, if the APC has not delivered according to him, or for those who so believe that as it's supposed to deliver, it was because the PDP, of which he was the wrecking ball, gave it another lifeline. And he should also know that he's partly responsible for the situation in which we find ourselves, and he should look at himself in the mirror and ask himself whether he's happy with what he sees.
And finally, sir, President Bola Tinubu didn't contest elections until he made that statement in Miloko. He's been around, he's been putting other people forward. Do you think Atiku failed in the bid to become president by not putting people forward?
I think that he's perfectly entitled, and nothing says this. If he wants to run, obviously as his body language is suggesting, and I think people around him, including Sule Baba, Indati Baba Ahmed, have said to him that he should no longer put himself forward. If he wants, he's free to do so. But then you ask yourself, you see, I don't know whether it was offline. I'd mentioned this, that if you look at his political journey so far, he started out under the People's Front, which was a gift, the platform around which Shehu Yaradua organized, all right, one of the most ingenious politicians that we've had in decades, all right. And after Shehu Yaradua exited, that platform was literally handed over to Atiku. What has he made of it? What has he made of the People's Front? I think he needs now more than ever before, and I hope the time is not it's not too late indeed, to sit down, use whatever is left of his goodwill and his assets and his resources to organize and then create the sort of platform that will be a viable alternative platform to the ruling party, if that is what he desires to happen in 2027.
For more on this very interesting topic, visit azuishekwene.com, where you find the full article to read and like and share. Thank you for coming on Conversation, Azu.
Thanks for having me, Julius. It's a pleasure.
Bye for now.
Conversations with Azu Ishekwene.